your customers, most of them are financing their home. Let's just say that spray foam, along with the high efficiency variable speed equipment, sealed gas combustion furnace, tankless hot water heater, adds $20,000, $30,000 to the build price. Okay, what is that going to actually do to their mortgage payment? Increase it maybe $50 a month.
Right.
Well, with spray foam insulation, you can cut your bill in half, which in turn is going to save you more than $50 a month on your energy expenses, therefore offsetting that cost from day one.
Hey everyone, today we're here with Matt O'Connor from Texas Insulation. Matt's an on-site consultant with Texas Insulation. He's been in the industry a long time, super smart guy. He's the guy that we call. He's the first contact whenever we have any kind of questions spray foam related. We never met anybody that knows more about insulation than Matt. So, hey Matt, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And I really appreciate working with you guys for the years that I have. You guys have been a great contractor, very, dependable, reliable as far as, providing work and also paying your bills. So all of that's much appreciated, and I value the relationship for sure.
Awesome. Well, we thank you, man. Look, could you tell us a little bit more about your role at Texas Insulation?
So Texas Insulation is a regional specialist for Energy One America. Energy One America is our parent company. We have grown very quickly here in the Texas market. I used to own another company that was acquired by Texas Insulation as part of their growth and expansion. We are now expanded into Dallas and also Austin as well as Houston, where I'm located. But basically what our main goal is to be the number one insulation provider here in Texas, primarily for spray foam insulation. That is our specialty. We are not a fiberglass contractor that owns a spray foam rig. We are a spray foam contractor that does some fiberglass, but we do millions and millions of dollars of foam installations annually. We've got a very strong reputation in the market. With great reviews online. We work with some really great builders, from production builders to semi-production builders to some more small individual home builders. But spray foam insulation is our passion. It's my passion. I've worked with foam insulation for about 8 or 9 years. Insulation industry as a whole, about 12 years. I live in a full foam house, and I could talk about it all day long. So I love it. And I love to educate people because there's a lot of misinformation in the market. And unfortunately, that it spreads like wildfire, and it can actually make a bad name for spray foam, when in fact, it's not the spray foam that's the problem. It's the builder and the contractor that didn't do their home and their insulation properly for that house.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. That's a lot of folks don't know that building a home isn't you hire a home builder, get a home built. Normally it's you hire a home builder that's managing 60 other small businesses, right? So if we go out there on an island and try to accomplish all of these things that ourselves, and we try to be the expert ourselves, that's where the problems normally arise from. So it's really important for us to have somebody on our team for each of these industries to reach out to. So instead of us making these calls on the insulation, what should we use? Where should we put it? What, how it interacts with other trades, et cetera. It's better for us to reach out to somebody that's what you do. That's what you study all the time. So you're focused on insulation the same way our company's focused on managing the project and putting the home together as a complete package. Another thing is kind of unique. We are working with a lot of small businesses, but there's something to be said about a larger brand, and the pros and cons to that, and what you get. With working with you, it makes sense why it's so nice to work with y'all. Y'all do have a larger brand, but like you said, you were the owner of your own successful spray foam business as well. So kind of both sides. The things that we're dealing with as a business owner, and you also have a large brand behind you to get this, to get everything solved. So jumping into the spray foam insulation and some of the questions our clients have and some of the questions that we go back and forth over. Let's kind of start with what spray foam insulation is, kind of how it works. And you mentioned a lot of that misinformation that's in the market. I live in a full foam house as well, with energy costs going up every day. I'm so happy that that's the route that we chose. There's the cost on the front end when we build homes or when we buy homes, and then there's the daily costs that we spend for the rest of our lives living in those homes. So could you talk a little bit about how spray foam really works and what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two primary insulation types that are used in the market. It's not to say that there's others, but fiberglass insulation is one that's very widely used among production builders, even custom builders, due to its inexpensive cost compared to spray foam. As you've mentioned already, spray foam is more of a premium insulation. There is a little bit more upfront cost associated with the spray foam, but over the life of the structure, you're going to reap dividends, for as long as that structure is there and is using energy, which is going to be indefinitely. One thing I try to explain to builders from kind of a cost value standpoint is there's two things you're going to be paying for over the life of a building. I say that. So most homes are being financed these days. Not everybody's paying cash. As interest rates rise, you might see more people paying cash for homes, but with rates still at a historic low compared to where they've been in the past, it makes a lot of sense to finance a home versus paying cash for it, because there's other investments that can yield higher returns, which would be a better place to put your money. What spray foam is going to add to a build really varies from project to project, but we typically see, let's just say a 25, to 3,000 square foot house. Especially on a 3,000 square foot house, for example, you generally get about 500 square feet per ton for your HVAC system. So that would require 2 units. With spray foam, we can get 800 to 1,000 square feet per ton, which would mean that you can condition that same house with 1 unit, therefore essentially offsetting the cost of the spray foam right up front. Now, that's not always the case, but in some instances it is. But the other thing that you have to take into account is the energy costs associated with it. My home is about 4,500 square foot. I've got a pool in the backyard. I have a vaulted living room, vaulted entry. I air condition the attic as well. So conditioned volume, I'm conditioning about 6,000 to 7,000 square feet of space. In this home, running variable speed systems, low-E windows, full spray foam. My highest bill last summer was $180, and that's paying about 9.5 cents a kilowatt under a fixed contract. And I know rates have gone up, so that savings is just going to, go up from there. But spray foam, it's something that's going to pay for itself year over year over the life of the structure. And it's also going to increase comfort. And just to kind of jump back to what spray foam is, it's a spray applied polyurethane that's sprayed in the walls and generally against the roof deck to create an airtight insulated envelope. Whereas traditional fiberglass insulation, they insulate at the ceiling level and then go down to the walls. So you have a vented attic space that's hot during the summer, cold during the winter. Those mechanical systems are sitting in an unconditioned environment. Spray foam is done a little differently. Instead of insulating at the ceiling level, we actually insulate at the roof deck, and we bring all that ductwork and the mechanicals inside of the sealed, semi-conditioned or conditioned environment, depending if you put AC in the attic or if you just naturally allow the air to exchange between the living area and the attic. When that's done, it creates an attic environment that's close to the interior temperature of the home, generally within just a few degrees. And also it's going to eliminate that risk of really any leakage on your ductwork. So any leakage you have is going to benefit the overall system. and it's going to just provide you a very comfortable home. So that's basically what spray foam insulation is. And some of the benefits, there's a lot more benefits, which we can talk about. But there's a lot of misconception when it comes to spray foam as well. One of the things that I've heard many times, and maybe you have, Jeremy, as well, is that you don't want to insulate a house with spray foam because it'll make the house too tight and you want your house to breathe. Well, I understand what they're saying, but they're a little confused in kind of the way that they're saying it. So you don't want a leaky house. You don't want uncontrolled infiltration and exfiltration, because what'll happen there is we're a cooling climate. Vapor drive is from the outside in. Heat seeks cold. If you have a leaky home with uncontrolled infiltration and exfiltration, you're going to have warm, moist air making its way into the conditioned envelope, hitting cold surfaces and condensing, which can cause mold. But the main concern that we have as a spray foam contractor is making sure the occupants are breathing good, clean, fresh, filtered air. So the way that that's addressed is we want to create a home as tight as possible, but we want fresh air being brought in for the occupants through the mechanical system using like a fresh air ventilation system, where fresh filtered air is being brought into the home. It's being dehumidified and it's being introduced to the structure in a controlled manner so as to reduce airborne allergens and dust and things of that nature. A lot of other things, but that would be, kind of one of the big things there.
With the barnuminiums, we build a lot of barnuminiums. We build both. I'm going to kind of go into that. But a lot of times we're going to build a steel wall and then a wood wall. That cavity is not completely full. Thoughts on that? What thicknesses do you suggest? If we don't need to fill that cavity, it's like, yeah, we can fill that cavity. It would just cost more, but we don't feel like you're getting the value of it at some.
Yeah, there's a point of diminishing return when it comes to all insulation, to where you're spending more and yielding less results. So when you look at a heat flow reduction chart, and if you were to go from, say, for instance, 5 inches of spray foam to 10 inches, you're not going to double the performance. You're only going to gain about 2% additional heat flow reduction. So there's no payback, there's very little payback in that extra money that's being spent. So yeah, there's things like that. Because the way I've kind of pitched it to fiberglass, customers in the past is, look, your customers, most of them are financing their home. Let's just say that spray foam, along with the high efficiency variable speed equipment, sealed gas combustion furnace, tankless hot water heater, adds $20,000, $30,000 to the build price. Okay, what is that going to actually do to their mortgage payment? Increase it maybe $50 a month?
Right.
Well, with spray foam insulation, you can cut your bill in half, which in turn is going to save you more than $50 a month on your energy expenses, therefore offsetting, that cost from day one, because you're going to pay your mortgage and you're going to pay your utilities. The question is, who are you going to pay more to?
Right.
There's an added value in putting it in your home because it's going to increase equity and resale value. And it's going to pay dividends over the life of the home. And let's be honest, nobody has the, false conception that utility rates are going down.
Right.
All indications are energy expenses are going up. And, now's as good a time as any to get prepared for that by creating a more energy efficient structure.
Yeah, man, those are all really, really good points. I like how you talked about that the attic isn't 140 degrees on a Texas summer day, right? That the unit's not struggling in the heat, and on the other hand, it's you're not as reliant on the duct insulation or the leaks that could possibly be there, et cetera, because you're in kind of this whole conditioned space. It's better on the unit, better on all the mechanicals, et cetera. So as far as the insulation, as a spray foam insulation, what are some different types that we can expect to see?
Well, spray foam really is generally kind of boiled down to 2 categories. You've got a product called open cell spray foam and a product called closed cell spray foam. They're both spray applied polyurethanes, but there's some differences in the performance and the material characteristics. The best way I can kind of present that is in a kind of a side-by-side comparison. So your open cell foam is a spray applied polyurethane, just like your closed cell foam, but it's a softer foam. Open cell foam, if you spray a wall with it, you could take your finger, shove your finger right in it. Closed cell foam, you spray it against a wall, it's rock hard. You could literally put a nail in it, hang a 20-pound bowling ball from it. It's that tough. Open cell foam's non-structural, whereas closed cell foam will increase the structural strength of a building by 200 to 300 times. Both of them are air barriers. One of the other advantages of closed cell foam over open cell is the fact that it's a waterproof, flood resistant insulation. That's also a class 2 vapor barrier. Open cell has an R value of 3.7 per inch, generally speaking, plus or minus, but closed cell foam has an R value of anywhere from 6.3 to 7 per inch. The open cell foam, it is about half the cost of closed cell foam. Both of them are great products and they have their uses. I wouldn't say one is better over the other because there's trade-offs to both. One other example would be for like sound dampening. Open cell foam, due to the fact that it's a softer foam, will help absorb sound better, whereas closed cell foam can reflect sound more. So that's really kind of the big difference between the two products. Again, both of them, they have their uses in residential construction and in other forms of buildings as well.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. So you mentioned R value a little bit in there. R value seems to be something that it's a term that we've all heard for a long time, but we don't really know what it is. And I don't expect a full explanation on what R value is. But as far as if I'm comparing an R13 or an R19 fiberglass insulation, spray foam insulation doesn't necessarily come with that label, right? You know, you use a different thickness on the roof as you do on the walls. Sometimes the cavity is completely full. Maybe some other times it doesn't make sense for that. So could you just kind of summarize for us a little bit better understanding about, you know, when we're speaking with our insulation contractors, I know that spray foam, as far as an envelope system, knocks it out of the park, where fiberglass insulation still has a long way to go with that. But as far as comparing the R values, is that just kind of a missed term, or is there some type of value there that we can, you know, that we can use as far as, you know, language?
Yeah, so Jeremy, that's a great question because we get it all the time. People ask, for instance, well, you know, why should I use spray foam when a 3.5 inch spray of foam in a wall is going to produce an R13 and a fiberglass bat at 3.5 inches is an R13? You know, why am I going to spend more money for spray foam when it has the same R value? And here's the big difference. So what R value is, it's resistance to heat flow. And these insulations are measured against resistance to heat flow in controlled laboratory environments, not taking into account all of the real world conditions that we deal with on a home. But essentially, one thing that fiberglass insulation doesn't do, where spray foam does, which makes a huge difference in the performance, is the fact that spray foam is an air barrier, whereas fiberglass insulation is not. And that is super critical because that's where you lose so much energy, is through air infiltration and exfiltration. So when we can create a tighter structure that has reduced air infiltration and exfiltration, that's going to boost the efficiency of our home quite dramatically. It's going to allow that AC system to do a better job of keeping the structure, the house, cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter with less wasted energy. Also, one of the other benefits of the spray foam is it's a custom fit every cavity. It's a spray applied material, goes in as a liquid, expands 120 times its wet volume for our open cell, about 40% its wet volume for our closed cell foam. And we can get into hard to reach places, irregular framing designs, and get a complete airtight seal on that wall system. So For example, where you've got an interior wall, which meets an exterior wall, you oftentimes have hollow cavities back there behind the framing that there's no way you can get insulation in when you're using fiberglass. You're really limited with just running a bead of caulk on both sides of it to try to air seal it. Whereas with spray foam insulation, we can actually inject the foam into that hollow cavity and get that cavity insulated as well. But one of the big differences, it really has to do with the design of the house. The way that the building envelope is created. With fiberglass insulation, we generally have a vented attic system. So what that means is you're going to have soffit vents, ridge vents, some type of intake ventilation and exhaust ventilation. And your attic is going to really be, subject to that heat during the summer, that cold during the winter. Whereas with a spray foam house, we're doing a fully encapsulated, sealed attic space. When you do that, you don't have any insulation on the ceiling. All of the insulation goes against the roof line, and there is no ventilation to the attic space. So what that's going to do is bring that mechanical system inside of the conditioned space, which is going to greatly boost the efficiency of the HVAC equipment. So much so that when you run a mechanical load calculation on your HVAC system and what you're going to need for that house to properly condition it, you're going to see about a 40% reduction in system size because of those very facts.
And and you mentioned the misnomer that that a house needs to breathe, or the concern that the house is too tight or the house needs to breathe. So you talked about it earlier. It's not that the home's not getting intake air. It's just that it's a controlled intake air, which means it's filtered, it's dehumidified, everything that you said as far as the benefits of how we control that air. So the way that you outline the system that we're, historically used to seeing is when that home breathes, what we're really saying is it's going to come in through maybe some soffit venting and then out through a ridge vent or the whirlybirds that you see on top of a house, or some other exhaust ventilation system such as that. With that air, depending on the environment outside, it's going to be bringing in moisture into your attic as well, that whether the amount of moisture you're not really able to control at that point with that uncontrolled air. So I think those are all really good points. As far as some of the things that we have clients, or you have clients that are concerned with things, you mentioned the house being too tight. What are some of the other concerns, such as I've heard that my house is going to mold if I have spray foam and things like that? What are some other main concerns that you see that aren't necessarily as legitimate? They're just kind of educational gaps.
Yeah, so great question. I think mold is a big one down in our climate zone right along the coast. There's been a lot of stories of people who had homes, not just spray foam, but also fiberglass insulated homes, which have developed mold. And really what it comes down to is an improperly designed and insulated home. Spray foam houses can have mold if they're not done right. Fiberglass homes can have mold if they're not done right. What it takes to do a house right, now that's the important question. And what we want to do as an insulation contractor is make sure that the home is as tight as possible, so we don't have that uncontrolled infiltration and exfiltration, and namely the infiltration, because that's when we see the high moisture levels is during the summertime in our climate zone. And heat seeks cold. When you've got a house that's cold and it's hot outside, that heat wants to try to make it into the structure. And if you bring heat into the home, if you bring with it also moisture, it could find cold surfaces and condense. So it's very important that the insulation contractor do a good job in properly air sealing the home. And then from there, you want to rely on the mechanical system to condition the air and properly dehumidify it. So there's a partnership that has to take place there. You want to create a tight envelope, but then you want a properly sized and designed HVAC system with some type of fresh air mechanical ventilation. So that way the occupants are breathing good, clean, fresh filtered air. If you do those two things right, then you will have a very successful spray foam installation and house that's not going to have any mold problems.
Yeah, that's on the same line as that when you're talking about partnering with the HVAC contractor to make sure, you know, both systems are helping each other out rather than fighting each other. I know that within our company, you've done a really great job with helping educate our team as well. Our superintendents have now, you know, now been trained to walk through the home and look for certain key things that you've helped point out to us. I know that you've had meetings with our supervisors, you've had meetings with even our HVAC installers so that everybody can be on the same page about how important all of this works together. If you leave the next day and then I have 3 more contractors come in and burn a bunch of holes into the walls and bring all of their equipment in through and don't seal it off, you know, that can cause just as many problems as doing it improperly in the first place where your team doesn't ever know. So I know the order of events is very, very important to us. We do certain things in certain orders before you guys ever come in. And then we have checks along the way, even to go so far in our project management checklists at different phase completions. There's lots of things in there that we double check and make sure so our supervisors always have an eye out so something of this nature, like you're talking about, doesn't get covered up. So thanks for bringing up those points. I think those are really important, and I think mold is a really big thing that's high on folks' lists when they're asking these questions. And it's important to know that mold is not something. It doesn't. Spray foam isn't what causes mold. The mold can grow in any, you know, molded, you know, perfect environment that it can grow in. The spray foam isn't going to attribute to that, but there are some things that we could do wrong, you know, that make that a little bit worse. On the same kind of
and let me just stop you right there, Jeremy. And that's where it kind of goes into, you know, choosing a contractor like you guys who understand that and really have those checks in place so that if anything is done to the structure after insulation, you guys are making sure that it's sealed up, because that has created failures on houses where a builder, you know, maybe had their plumber come in or an electrician run a wire that didn't get sealed after the fact, which was a contributing factor into problems that they had with the envelope. So hats off to you guys for doing that for sure.
So a few other things that we've a little lighter on the list as far as concerns, but I have had a few clients ask about, you know, fire. Is it fire resistant? Is it something that we need to be concerned with? You know, how do we need to cover and care for it that way?
So your standard open cell foam is a very flammable product, whereas an Appendix X foam is actually pretty fire resistant. I've got a photo of an NFPA 286 burn test with our product. It's a room corner test where they basically build a room, spray foam the walls, spray foam the ceiling, have an open doorway, oxygen rich environment. They put a burner in the corner, and our product at 10 minutes is literally just charred on the surface. Whereas a non-Appendix X foam, the room is completely engulfed within 55 seconds. So we use a really good product that is very fire resistant, safe to be used, you know, in residential construction. So that's one of the things. If the foam's going to be left exposed, for instance, say you were doing a restaurant, and you know you're doing like a blacked out, you know, exposed, you know, foam ceiling, you know, with downlights and everything. In that case, you don't have a sheetrock ceiling in place. So you're not meeting code there by the sheetrock. So we do have a special paint that's designed and tested with our product to provide that 15-minute fire rated requirement. And basically the way that it works is it's put on as a paint. In the event of a fire, it chars and bubbles and keeps the surface temperature of the foam below 250 degrees for 15 minutes to prevent any type of acceleration of a fire. So spray foam, it is a very safe product. It has to be done according to code, assuming that it's being done to code. then it's, safe as any building material you're using in your house.
Okay, so the paint kind of brings up something too. With that exposed, whether it's in a shop or a garage setting, or even if it's in the ceiling of a restaurant or something like that. So there's certain types of paint that work well that meet those fire standards. There's certain types. We've heard of folks just painting it, going to the hardware store and painting black with black paint, or even some contractors have gone as far as saying that they could mix the paint in with the chemical. What does that look like, and what are some of the things we need to watch out there?
Yeah, so that would have to be something that was specifically approved by the manufacturer. I don't know of really any manufacturers that are doing that. Now, there are some manufacturers that have color already mixed into their foams, kind of as like a branding thing. So for instance, Demelac has a product that's kind of has a green hue to it, their closed cell foam. I'm familiar with Geico Firestop, which has kind of like a salmon, kind of almost pink color to it. I'm familiar with JM Corbon, which kind of has like a purplish color to it for their closed cell foam. But outside of that, most open cell and closed cell foams are off-white to tannish in color. And the manufacturer will not allow you to add things to it because that's going to change the physical properties of the chemicals and could create, adverse effects that, were not intended. So we never mix any pigment in with our spray foams. If somebody wants a certain finished color, that can be accomplished through thermal barriers and, exterior and interior paints being put on the spray foam.
Gotcha. So we build conventional framed homes, just like any other custom builder, but we also have a specialty in barndominiums. So metal framed homes have been commonly referred to as barndominiums. We have a lot of experience in this area, and we're one of the builders that, as a builder, focuses on that certain style home. Just like if you had a builder that focused on log homes, right? So you've done a lot of these barndominiums for us. We've had great success. There are a few little unique things about barndominiums. For one, the way we do it is we build a steel structure, and then it's almost a wood structure basically built inside of that. So in that instance, you may have an 8 to 10 inch wall cavity. Sometimes I get asked, hey, are we going to fill that complete cavity, or should we? What does that look like? Does leaving that air gap help or hurt? Do we get any kind of added value? I know it would be more expensive to do that thickness. What does that look like as far as recommended thickness on the walls and the roof?
Yep, great question. So our values and thicknesses are going to be really largely kind of determined based on geographical location. So what we use to insulate, what are our values, what our thicknesses are going to be different than, let's say, up in Minnesota, as well as with material types. So you need to first make that distinction, because I see it all the time where people get online, they're just doing some Google searches and they get information, not taking into account the climate zone that maybe, this particular article is kind of being, addressed within. And so that's where you want to start for sure, is just make sure that you understand the geographical location you're in, what type of materials are acceptable, which are not. And then from there, understanding what type of R values you need. When it comes to thicknesses, so we generally use 5.5 inches of open cell foam on a roof deck, or 3 inches of closed cell foam for conditioned spaces. That's an R21 for both the open cell and the closed cell. On the walls, we typically do 3.5 inches of open cell or 2 inches of closed cell. That's an R13 to an R14, depending if it's the open cell or the closed cell. Now, you can go thicker on both the roof and the walls, but I will say there's a point of diminishing return, and it's super important to understand that. To give you an example of that, let's say, we've got 5.5 inches on the roof, and a customer says, you know what, I'd really like to go to 11 inches. Well, that's something that we can obviously do, and it would double the price. But the thing is, you're not going to double the efficiency. So there's a point of diminishing return. When you look at a heat flow reduction chart, adding 5.5 inches to a roof deck would increase the efficiency by about 2 to 3%. Nowhere near justifying the added expense of that extra insulation. Do you need to fill the cavity? No, you sure don't. Again, it goes down to pointed diminishing return. Once we've created an airtight envelope, having some airspace in that wall cavity isn't going to hurt anything at all.
One thing that I'm asked quite a bit is, you touched on it with the closed cell foam being waterproof or flood resistant, et cetera. How much benefit would we get out of closed cell foaming a home instead of open cell, as far as if we did, for instance, have the grommet on a screw in the roof failed, or some other type of, not huge hole in the roof by any means, but say a small, hard to find leak? Is closed cell something that would enable us to put that out of our mind forever, or is there kind of a line there that we need to address?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And as you've already kind of referenced back to, the open cell foam, it's a softer foam. It's not waterproof, whereas the closed cell foam is a harder foam. It is waterproof. So there's a couple different schools of thought there. Some people take it as, hey, look, if there's a leak, I want to know about it, so that way I can fix it. And in that case, open cell foam would allow you to, more easily identify where that leak is, fix it, and then, replace that insulation that got wet or damaged as a result of the water. Other people, kind of see it as the closed cell foam is going to provide additional weatherization and sealing, and that's true. In some instances, that could be a benefit. Because the foam is going to bond to whatever it's sprayed against. You're not going to get water between the foam and any surfaces, because it's an airtight bond to whatever it's sprayed against. So in that respect, there is some advantage to doing closed cell foam, for instance, on a metal building, because all of the seams, the screws, things like that are getting sealed up properly. They're getting sealed up. I wouldn't say properly, but they're getting sealed up with the closed cell foam. So it's going to provide kind of a second line of defense. Both products can be used on a metal building, and there are advantages and disadvantages to both, as we've already kind of discussed. But when you're using open cell foam, it's just super important to go through the building and make sure that things are sealed up well to begin with. And that's one thing that I can say that I've seen that you guys do that you rarely see with metal building companies and barn dominium companies, is you guys go through pretty extensively with can foam and really go through and kind of seal things up and prep it for the open cell foam when the open cell foam is used to reduce any type of risk of moisture or water getting to that foam. The closed cell foam is going to basically kind of do what you guys are doing for you. So that way you didn't have to go through as much extensive, prep work before the insulation is installed.
Okay, so that makes sense. So it's really a judgment call that we can help guide our clients through, but it is a second line of defense. It would help. However, it does cost more. So it's just a balance on what we're looking at as far as what we want to spend and what level of quality we're getting there. So we're not necessarily just undercutting the quality by doing open cell. It's a perfectly fine product. It doesn't have maybe that second line of defense, but it doesn't have that cost associated either. So those are judgment calls that we can work with our clients to go through. Would it be, we've also talked a little bit with clients about maybe putting a thinner layer of closed cell against the building, kind of enveloping that watertight seal, and then going back with an open cell to reach that additional R value. I struggle through that question a little bit, to be honest, because by the time I put an inch of closed cell on, and then I'm going to add, instead of adding another inch of closed cell, I add another 2.5 inches of open cell on the walls. But you've got different rigs, or you've got to pull the rigs and change the added labor of changing the material out, etc. So I kind of struggle through whether the cost benefit gets us the added value of the closed cell without really just offsetting the differences in the labor. Could you speak to a little more to that? Is there kind of a hack there, or or are we just kind of drawing straws there? Need to either stick with closed cell or open cell?
So great question. So I see kind of a benefit on the roof deck, but not necessarily the walls, because when you take an inch of closed cell for the roof, that gives you an R7, and then you top it with 3.5 to 4 inches of open cell to achieve an R21. You will spend less for that finished insulation system on the roof than you would spend for 3 inches of closed cell foam. And you are going to get kind of that added, kind of waterproof insulation there against the roof deck. And then you're going to have that open cell foam over top. So the advantage of that is it's going to provide kind of some good sound dampening, because the closed cell is going to be good at helping kind of reflect sound, reduce transmission of more lower pitch sounds. And then the open cell foam is going to provide a different type of material makeup, which is also going to help reduce, sound as well. So you kind of get a different kind of sound reduction profile out of that, as well as some extra kind of waterproofing on the roof there from the inside. On the walls, to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense, because by the time we do an inch of closed cell and have to do the open cell foam, which really the minimum that we spray is 3.5 inches, because it's really hard to control just like a 2-inch spray, you're already spending more than what you would have spent for 2 inches of closed cell foam. So if you wanted to do a hybrid approach, my suggestion would be stick with 2 inches of closed cell on the walls, do an inch of closed cell on the roof, and then top it with 3.5 to 4 inches of open cell foam. And that'll get you a cheaper system than doing 100% closed cell foam, but it'll provide you a lot of the benefits that you would have got with an all closed cell foam building.
Oh, okay. That makes perfect sense. Thanks for that. Man, you have really knocked it out of the park with the questions that we're asked a lot, and some of the things that we had on our mind as well. One last thing I'd really like to go over with you doesn't have as much to do about spray foam as it does who you choose to, install your spray foam or to do this project for you. Who are we partnering with? We've kind of talked a little bit about how important it is to us as a builder and why we do those things. But you've mentioned you can sell us more foam, you can spray more foam, but honestly, there's a diminishing return there for the client. So instead of just accepting that double price check, you let us know that information. You're even putting it out there to the world with this. So that speaks a little bit to your integrity and your honesty, which is self-serving in a sense. We are here as long-term brands. We're not here to sign this deal and then run off where nobody can find us again. So those things are really important. That truth of information is out there, whether they know it the day you sign the contract or not. Sooner or later they find out, and that all goes towards our long-term reputation. Just like being aware of paint. Oh yeah, we can mix that paint in. Well, does that change the manufacturer's specs on the product? Does it make it to where we're liable for those things failing now if the chemical balance isn't right, etc.? So there's a lot that goes into your spray foam. There's some dangers with it not being installed right. I know a few years ago it got really popular to go out and buy a $20,000 spray rig and you were in business. Now you were a spray foam contractor. So the phone book filled up overnight. Contractors that had a brand new machine didn't even really know how to fire it up. So what are some of the things that we need to make sure we watch out for? I mean, if we can save a little money going with somebody that we've never heard of, what might we be getting into that could cost us tenfold on the back end that we don't really see coming?
So right there, I would just tell you, and I don't want to scare you or your viewers, but all you have to do is Google spray foam horror stories. And that's a lot of evidence right there on why you don't want to hire somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. Because it is a very technical application. We are the manufacturer. Unlike fiberglass insulation, which is manufactured in a controlled environment and the installer puts it in, we are actually making the finished product on site, and we're dealing with a variety of environmental conditions that need to be taken into account in processing that material to ensure that the finished product that's being put in your home meets the manufacturer's specifications and requirements. So having a reputable company that does this day in and day out, has been trained by the manufacturer, that follows the manufacturer's installation guidelines, is super critical to a successful spray foam installation. My suggestion is never just hire a contractor off of Craigslist. Find a company that has a good reputation, that you can look online and you can read the reviews, and they're not just a new startup, but they've got a reputation for doing good quality work, and that would be, I think, one thing that would help steer you away from being one of those horror stories that you can read about on the internet.
Matt, thank you so much. We've covered, the differences in spray foam versus fiberglass, what spray foam really is. We've covered whether, what the benefits are to, and the differences in closed cell and open cell. I really appreciate you letting us dive in a little bit on barndominiums and what spray foam has to add there. And of course, that last bit about how to stay out of, none of us want to be a horror story. We all have our stories personally about things that we went through. It's not that we've never made a mistake as a brand. It's not that we've never had to go back and figure something out. We do pride on ourselves on actually coming out and figuring it out with you. All of our clients, we feel like we're teaming up with them to build this house, and we're teaming up with all of our contractors to build this house. And y'all are a very important member of our team. We really appreciate all your expertise. One last thing before you jump off, if they want to reach out to you directly, how can people get a hold of you with Texas Insulation? What's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, so if somebody were wanting to reach out to me directly, I would say, my mobile phone is probably the best way.
We're not going to let you give that mobile phone number because it's super spam worthy. So once they reach out to you via email,
let's do this. Go to our website, texasinsulation.com. There's a form you can fill out, and that'll get you in touch with our lead manager, who can go ahead and put you in touch with me directly. Or alternatively, you can call our office, 713-804-3626, and we can go ahead and get your information and make sure that you ask for me, and I'd be more than happy to help you with your project.
The man's willing to give you his cell phone number. We're just not going to do it on here. So
I appreciate the opportunity to jump on here with you and try to put to bed some misconceptions when it comes to spray foam insulation. And I really do hope that your viewers find this to be helpful. And if they need any help with their projects, obviously they can work with us directly. But if they're looking to build a barn dominium, I couldn't recommend Turnkey Custom Homes enough. They're a really good company. They're people of integrity, and they really want to provide their customers with the best finished product that they possibly can. So kudos to you guys for producing this video, and thank you for allowing us to partner with you.
Man, Matt, I appreciate it so much. I know everybody that we work with is going to get a lot of valuable information out of this, and it helps us a ton. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule.